Hola, hoy vamos a repasar los pronombres de objeto directo y más tarde en otro video vamos a repasar los pronombres de objeto indirecto. Vas a usar el mismo paquete para estos apuntes, pero hay un video para los pronombres de objeto directo y otro video para los pronombres de objeto indirecto. Primero vamos a repasar los pronombres de objeto directo. Es necesario recordar que un pronombre en general reemplaza un sustantivo y recuerda que un sustantivo significa a noun. Y que el objeto directo de una oración recibe la acción del verbo. You need to remember that the subject of the sentence does the verb, and that the direct object is on the receiving end of the verb. Y el objeto directo de una oración puede ser una persona, o un animal, o una cosa. It is very, very important to remember that a direct object can be a thing in addition to a person or an animal, because when we get to indirect objects, it's one of the big things that differentiates between the two. Now, you'll notice that this next section here we do not have in the notes. And this is just a quick review of how we use direct object pronouns in English. And you're going to see these same sentences and be able to write them down on the next slide, where you see translations of how these question and answer sets work in Spanish. And the reason why we're going about it this way in terms of a question and answer is because typically we use pronouns in the context of conversations or in the context of, a longer paragraph if we're writing, or a longer monologue if we're speaking, or a dialogue, quite simply because they allow us to keep repeating, they allow us to not repeat ourselves again and again and again. So if you look at the first question and answer set here, did you get the flu vaccine last winter? The answer is yes, I got it. It in the answer is replacing the flu vaccine in the question. In the second question and answer set here, did you need crutches? And the answer, yes, I needed them. Them is replacing crutches, the direct object of the question. And finally, our third example in English, when did you see the doctor? I saw him or I saw her yesterday. In English, we can definitely use the them, of course, as well, but getting a direct translation of that into Spanish is much more complex and doesn't quite fit, as Spanish is such a heavily gendered language. Everything is either masculine or feminine. So keep that in mind in terms of the translations there, and that's why we're seeing the him, her here and not another option as well. But I saw him or her yesterday, him or her replacing the doctor in the question. Oh, sorry, I went a little too far there. And so now we see a bit of how these are used in Espanol, and this is where you get to the table in the middle of the first page. You've got our first question in English, en inglés y en español, and this is what you should type or write into the table on the first page. Did you get the flu vaccine last winter? The question en español, ¿recibiste la vacuna para la gripe el invierno pasado? And the answer in English, yes, I got it. And the answer, sí, la recibí. La replacing la vacuna para la gripe, the flu vaccine, in the, from the question in the answer. Our second question and answer set, en inglés y en español, did you need to use crutches? ¿Necesitaste usar las maletas? And then the answer in English, yes, I needed them. And in Spanish, sí, necesité usarlas. And you'll notice that here, the direct object pronoun las to replace las muletas is attached to the end of the infinitive usar. So necesité usarlas. It is also 100% accurate and fine to say sí, las necesité usar, but I did want to show you this other option here as well. In some cases, it can be used. Your final question and answer set here is, when did you see the doctor? And in español, ¿cuándo viste al médico o a la médica? And for our answer in English, I saw him or her yesterday. And in Spanish, lo vi ayer, for I saw him yesterday, replacing al médico. Or la vi ayer, replacing la médica, and that would translate to I saw her yesterday. It's also important to remember, as we said earlier, the direct object in a sentence is the person, animal, or thing that receives the action of the verb. And something you can do to find the direct object in a sentence is to ask yourself who or what is on the receiving end of the action. And so now we are going to move on to our direct object pronouns en inglés and en español. And you will notice that in English we have me, you, him, her, you, or it, because remember, direct object can be a thing, us, you all, or them. And remember, of course, in English, then in English as well as in Spanish, them can refer to people or objects. Okay. So we have in Spanish me for me, te for an informal you, him, her, a formal you or it is lo, la, nos is us, os would be for you all in en España, sí, and for you all or them would be los or las. So you'll notice that for the him, her, and the you, it, and you all and them, we do have masculine and feminine forms for both of those. También es importante saber que típicamente se usan en el contexto de una conversación, in the context of a conversation. And although we're going to use them at this point in time in the context of a conversation, we are still in a bit of a mode of find and replace. And so one of the things I'm hoping we can start doing in class as we have more of us in person is to be able to walk through how to work with a sentence that requires direct object pronouns and then requires direct object pronouns and indirect object pronouns, and as we get a little farther, double object pronouns, and then figure out really how to answer questions. Finding the right verb conjugation, answering the question accurately, and then also replacing nouns appropriately with direct object pronouns as needed. In terms of where they go in a sentence, if there's only one verb in the sentence, they go before the conjugated verb. If there is an infinitive, in other words, unconjugated form, or a present participle, which is the ando, yendo form of a verb, you can attach them to the end of an infinitive or present participle, but it is always okay for sentences that do not contain commands to put them before the conjugated verb in a sentence. And you'll see a couple of different examples of that at the bottom of page 2 and on the final slide for the direct object pronouns here. When you're working with commands, direct object pronouns must be attached to the end of an affirmative command, and for a negative command, they must be between the no and the command form of the verb. So those are absolutes. When we're working with commands, the rules are a little different, so please keep that in mind as we move forward. A few more examples here at the bottom of página 2, so that you should make sure you write down. So for A, we have sacaron los médicos una radiografía de tu tobillo. And so the question is asking, did the doctors take an x-ray of your ankle? The answer being sí, la sacaron. Yes, they took it. La replacing una radiografía de tu tobillo, an x-ray of your ankle. For B, ¿necesitaste tú los puntos en algún momento? Did you need stitches at some point? The answer being no los necesité. No, I did not need them. Los means them and is replacing los puntos, the stitches in the original question. And finally, you've got a couple of different ways of using a direct object pronoun for the last one here. Señora, me corté. ¿Puedo tener una curita? Señora, I cut myself. May I have a Band-Aid? And the answer, sí, puedes tenerla. Yes, you can have it. And you'll notice in this case, la, to replace una curita, is attached to the end of the infinitive tener. And then, sí, la puedes tener. Yes, you can have it. But la is just placed before the conjugated verb, the conjugated form of poder. So you're going to stop here for now. When you are ready for the indirect object pronouns, you'll start on página 3. But what you should do is submit what you have for the direct object pronouns before moving on to the indirect. Gracias.